it isn't a question of whether I felt it. The fact is that American Jews support Israel, and I understood that. And the fact is that every Jewish prime minister that I have known has enlisted American Jews to bring as much pressure as possible in the political process on American presidents. That's understandable. I don't object to it. Now, a president must not go along with it on occasion, because let me explain something about what is called the Jewish lobby in this country. In the first place, Jews, understandably in the United States, because of what happened in World War II, because of the Holocaust, are going to put first priority on the survival of Israel. Now, as good Americans as they are, they believe that America's survival and security is directly related to Israel's. In other words, their belief is that being for Israel first means that does not mean you're putting America second, because they think it goes together. An American president, however, has to approach it in a different way, in my opinion. He's got always to think first of what is best for America, and that's true whether it has to do with the Israelis or whether it has to do with the Irish or the Germans or what have you, or the Poles, etc. Usually what is best for America is also best for Israel and vice versa. But on occasions, for example, an American president must make a decision that does not in effect give the Israelis a blank check. And one example of that is a decision that I made. I decided early on in our administration that we were going to seek good relations with Egypt and others of Israel's neighbors. Many of my Israeli friends didn't like that because they wanted a special relationship with Israel and Israel only. But I have always said that Israel's interests are better served to have the United States a friend of Israel's neighbors and potential enemies than to leave a vacuum which the Soviet Union would fill. I still believe that, and I think that should be American policy today.
Cross our hearts and hope to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn here. Glad to be your host on this Tuesday night, July 8th, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for episode number 219, where we're going to talk about the SEAL brand, in our ongoing effort, my ongoing effort to understand politics here in Minnesota. I find myself becoming more political, not by design and not by desire, but because the times are calling me forth to do everything that I can to maintain the Republic of the United States of America, to maintain my freedom, and to maintain the rights that were granted to me by a creator. And it is my belief that those rights granted by a creator are precisely what the left intends to take away. And that goes right into the heart of this theme that we're talking about now, which is our reverence for the military, our trying to understand Christianity as it is a force in America, Christian Zionism. How are these secret societies and societies or subcultures influencing American domestic and foreign policy? And then once I understand that, how can I talk to these constituencies in a way that creates a unity of America Firsters in the Republican Party that work together to make my neighborhood well, prosperous, safe, all the good things that I believe politics is supposed to generate for our country, for our state, for our local neighborhoods. And to that end, I want you to know that I'm very politically active. I have an event coming up, which I'm going to start talking about on future podcasts. I think it's the 23rd of July here in SD 45. There's some 668 people on a list of supporters that I'm going to start inviting to meetings in SD 45 because I want to get citizens that are not involved in the Republican Party political process. I want to organize them, work with them, teach them how the party works, and get them to caucus in February of 2026. We are going to be working on this every day. I'll be canvassing my neighborhoods. I'm going to be meeting with people constantly. I am meeting with people constantly, and I'm doing this because it's my responsibility, my civic duty, in my opinion, for my backyard. Now, I recognize I'm a hyperactivist, but not really. I mean, not really. I'm just doing politics American style. Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm all right. I'm a little bit wound up today. It's a lot of things going on. We got a lot going on. We got a big agenda here on the podcast today. We have a political agenda. And the political agenda, really, if you talk about Minnesota, and the same thing goes for your state, there is in your local neighborhood a Democrat and Republican Party committee. Both parties are almost certainly represented in your neighborhood, unless, of course, I mean, if you're out in the, you know, wilds of Wyoming, maybe there are some areas that are not, politically organized, but almost the entire country is organized into political districts. This is tied to the elections of our state legislators and our state senators. Uh, these political organizations, these boundaries can be found at your Secretary of State website. For example, in Minnesota, you can go to the Minnesota Secretary of State website, and there's a link called Precinct Finder. All you got to do is put your address in, and it'll tell you what precinct you're in, what Senate district you're in, what legislative district you're in. Everything is going to pop right up on the screen, and you got to know where you are. I mean, if you don't know where you are, how do you know what to do? So the first step is to just go to your Secretary of State website and find out where you are politically. It's going to identify. I live in a district called 45B. It's Senate District 45. On the B side, we have one state senator from 45, a Democrat. And then we have two legislators, one from the B side, a Democrat, and then on the A side, a rhino named Andrew Myers is the Republican representative over there, and he is a unrepentant rhino of the highest order. I'm going to say he lies directly to me, and that pisses me off because that is the thing that triggers my ire for politicians. I don't need to agree with politicians. I don't expect to agree with them. I just want them to be honest in their disagreement with me so that we have a place to start talking to each other. But when people lie, you really can't have an honest conversation. See, an honest conversation requires honesty. But being that as it may, leaving that aside, that's not my world. That's 45A. My world is 45B. So I joined my local committee many years ago, about 4 years ago. I served on it. It was the SD 45 committee. You join it. What you're going to find when you join these committees is most of the people are there for reasons that have nothing to do with doing politics. In fact, the party leader of our state, Alex Plekish, when I was trying to do politics, actually said to me, "We don't do that here." That's why I call State Chairman Alex Plekish, Mr. We don't do that here. He didn't want us to do politics. What's the point of being involved in politics, Alex, if we can't do politics? People get involved in the parties people like me, because we want to be politically active. We want to express our political will and organize political activity. But if you don't agree with the prevailing zeitgeist of your committee, they're going to try to remove you. So let me tell you, I'm going to give you my advice. Find your local committee and ask to join it. They can actually appoint you. Actually, you're supposed to be elected to these committees at conventions, but between the conventions, you could actually be appointed, and you just go to your committee chair, find them. There may be a website, a Facebook page. You can find them, call them and say, "Hey, I'm a Republican and I want to work to elect in Republicans." And then they may ask you some questions and you say, "I always vote for Republicans." You don't have to tell them anything And I'm going to suggest that you don't tell them anything about your political beliefs. Because if you don't exactly conform to their mold, they will seek to remove you because there is a war in the Republican Party in Minnesota and in your state between the establishment, what we call the rhinos, as you know, and the America Firsters who are trying to take over this party. And why are we doing that? Because we have a political ideology that's called America First. And that doesn't mean turning our back on the rest of the world. That means getting our arms around this $37 trillion debt, for example. It means we're anti-war, which we're going to talk about tonight in reference to the SEAL brand, for example. We have a political belief system that is crystallizing through the efforts of many people, thought leaders, intellectual leaders, candidates. We have a political ideology. It differs from the kind of ideology that emerged after President Richard Nixon. We started out with a cold open with Richard Nixon talking about Israel and American Jews. And I just wanted to play that because he talks about the Jewish lobby, which Royce White talked about, and they called him an anti-Semite for talking about the Jewish lobby. Guess what? Richard Nixon was also characterized as an anti-Semite, even though he was a great friend to Israel and bailed Israel out in 1973. Without his efforts in 73, Israel might be no more. So here's a president who was very pro-Israel. He said something, he was, accused of being anti-Semite because he tried to open up relations with other countries in the Middle East because he believed that, and he said it, if America is friends with Israel's neighbors, that's good for Israel. And did we not just see that during this uh, brush with nuclear war in this Israel-Iran spat where you had Jordan, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, uh, all these different countries were supportive of Israel and working to knock these missiles down. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying that is a foreign policy started by Richard Nixon in the 1960s and early 70s. Isn't it amazing how enduring presidential policy actually is? And Richard Nixon was an anti-Semite because he had the courage to say, hey, there's a Jewish lobby. And he talked about American Jews. And he talked about differing from American Jews from time to time when the interests served America first. He actually was a full-throated endorsement of America first. He said, the Irish, the Poles, it's all the same. Sometimes you have to put America first. That doesn't seem to me to be an anti-Semitic comment, yet it was characterized at the time as anti-Semitic. Of course, Tanner, you don't know this, and we could play it sometime. Richard Nixon is also on tape saying some very anti-Semitic things.
Oh, so he might have actually been an authentic anti-Semite?
Well, we probably should play some things. He said some nasty things about black people also. So did Ronald Reagan. Behind the curtain, when people speak from their hearts, we find out that they hold views that are racist and anti-Semitic. Okay, I don't hate people because they have racist and anti-Semitic views. I don't hate them for that. I mean, it's not what you say privately that gets exposed publicly. It's what you do as a public figure that really affects the lives of people. In other words, we're talking about the SEAL brand. SEALs are trained to do their job even when they're afraid. That's bravery, right? Well, you can be anti-Semitic or racist because you were raised that way or culturally you were brought up that way. But when you do the right thing, when you follow, what are you following? The Constitution of the United States. When you follow the Constitution, regardless of your personal opinions, you follow constitutional law, you're an American. And that's what we're trying to get to here. I'm not looking to I'm not advocating for people to be wiped clean of their cultural and historical memory. I'm asking for people to have a baggage drop by steeping themselves in what it is to be an American. We're not going to tell people, stop doing that. That doesn't work very well. What works well is when people get engaged with what America is, and then it fills them with the majesty of what we've created here as the American people. We can come together as the American people when we find the commonality that is granted to us by the framers through these soaring documents, these world renowned, in the history of the world, it's hard to find documents that rival our founding documents. So you join your committee, and then there's going to be votes on different issues. You get to vote on how the party is run. You can become a delegate. Becoming a delegate, now you can vote to endorse candidates, and et cetera, and so on. My point is, and what I'm sharing with you, if you're in SD 45, you can find me. I'm going to work to organize my community. It makes me a community organizer, like Barack Obama. I think that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So, as we get into tonight's activities to get to the heart of the podcast, before we get to the news that matters, what I'm exploring personally for political purposes is the vast reservoir of respect we have for our military, and it's well deserved. Uh, I know Adam Schwarze is probably going to watch some of this, and I want Adam Schwarze to know I do respect his service, his bravery, and his competency as a stone killer, which he brags about. Uh, and I've spent a lot of time with people like Adam Schwarze, and I respected him, and I've trained with people like this, and they are truly impressive human beings. It doesn't mean they'll be truly impressive politicians. It means they're truly impressive warriors. And there's a difference between being a warrior and being a politician. Now, we have a master model of the warrior priest, which has been um, degraded over time because we've separated warriors in the priesthood. At one time, to be a priest meant you were a warrior. So that is not the way we're doing things now. We train our warriors in one way and our priests in another. They're two separate secret societies. But I do appreciate, and I spend a long period of my time with people like, of my time on this earth with people like this. I think I have a lot of insight into the psychology in kind of a, racist or anti-Semitic way. Every person is different. I know that each one is unique, but there's the broad brush of the generalization. So I have a generalized belief about this, but I know that every person is different. Uh, and I said in the last podcast that I respected that Adam Schwarze got through SEAL training and that I probably wouldn't have made it. And that's just me knowing myself. And I thought about that afterwards because I've gone through some incredibly rigorous physical training. Extraordinarily rigorous. Not underwater training, but I'm talking about physical training at a very, very challenging level. I'm not so sure I couldn't have made it from a physical perspective, but I couldn't have made it from a mental perspective, and I'm going to tell you why. I can't give over like that. See, that's the thing that Adam Schwarze is not telling us that I know maybe you don't know. To get through those kind of experiences, you have to really give over to them. And I just don't have that in me. I can't be hypnotized, for example. Uh, I can't give over. And I've been embarrassed about that. It's like, wow, Schwartzy, you're a badass for being able to do that. I can't do it now. I felt bad about it. Very similar to I've always felt, and I've said this on the podcast, I got cousins in Israel that are in the West Bank carrying Uzis, and they're stone killers too. They're really stone killers. They've been killers since they've been teenagers, and they're my age. Some of these Israelis that are over there started killing Arabs when they were 13, 14 years old. Family members. So what I'm trying to say is I felt embarrassed about that too. Like, man, you guys are living on the edge and I'm over here, driving around in my, you know, Chrysler Cordoba with the Corinthian leather, you're out at war and I'm driving a Chrysler Cordoba with the Corinthian leather, smoking a joint, having a good time. And I felt guilty about that. Like, man, I should be in the SEALs like Adam Schwarze. I should be on the West Bank like Fischel and Rouvain. But I realize now in going through this podcast that was a kind of a self-hatred, that I didn't really understand myself or my own path. And if you haven't killed somebody, that's a blessing to not have to kill people. That's being blessed to not have to go to war or to choose not to go to war. And I'm not embarrassed anymore. I mean, seeing how these forces are playing out, I still have the respect, but I certainly respect my own path. And if you haven't walked that road, let's respect our veterans, let's respect our military members, but let's also understand how fortunate we are if we haven't had to do that. How, it's my choice not to do that. I could have joined the military. I never thought about it. I never thought about it. And that's really what the heart of the SEAL brand is. Some people want to do this work. Who are these people that want to do this work? And do we want them leading our country? That is the question of this podcast. And I'm not denigrating you if you're a veteran at all, because I have that respect and that reverence and spent 20 years of my life chasing it. But if a person has been trained to give over to that secret society, do we want them making decisions about the future of this nation? And then how does that interface with evangelical Zionism, which is eschatological, apocalyptic, and sees the entire military and geopolitical scenery from an eschatological perspective? How do these two things interact? What's driving our politics? Is science driving our politics? Is rational critical thinking driving our politics? Or is biblical verse, which we're going to look at today, from thousands of years ago, driving our politics? People don't talk about this very much. I certainly haven't had it explored for me. I've got to go myself, and it makes me a little bit sick to do it. I feel a little bit sick because it's kind of uncharted territory for me, and it's bringing up questions that are very uncomfortable because our country, as we're going to see shortly, reveres its warriors and elects them because they're reporting for duty. No, you're not reporting for duty. You're being elected to lead a republic of free people. Being, reporting for duty, that's called giving over to something that you're not in control of. I mean, these are things we got to parse through very carefully, particularly within the context of all the things that are confronting us on a geopolitical basis. And if you're in the party, you're in the room, you're in the deal. If you're not politically active, you're a spectator. What are you going to do to get involved? That is the point of the podcast. How can I motivate you into action? What are you going to do? And every time I make a podcast, I want to get better and better at trying to understand what motivates people to get them off the couch and into the game. If you want to get off at the couch and get into the game, you can go right to precinctstrategy.com because Dan Schultz put together a great website which can give you an overview of how to do it. So that's precinctstrategy.com. It's everything you need to do to get in the game, no matter what state you're in. There's information there for you. You can ask Dan questions on the website, you can come to me and ask questions, and we're going to get better and better at that as we go down the road, making our political organization more and more effective. Why? Well, people have a say even if they're not in the game. Our collective will is what politics describes. Politics is the process. It's like a thermometer. It tells us our body temperature. What is the collective will of the people? And we want peace, right? So President Trump is trying to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Trump in the White House yesterday. I realize people get real excited about the theatrics of the meeting. I do not. I know it's theater. I'm looking at what they do. Is there going to be peace or continued war? President Trump is trying to broker ongoing nuclear talks with Iran. And President Trump has even said he's willing to speak directly with the Iranians. Yet there are news reports that the United States and Israel are getting ready to attack Iran again. I don't know. You don't know. No pundit knows. Only the insiders know. And it could be as simple as carrots and sticks. Here's the carrot, and if you don't do what we want you to do, here's the stick. I'm doing a lot of very controversial shorts and clips that are posting up, and I'm getting to see people's reaction. And I'm going to tell you, more than half the people that react to my videos, my posts, want peace. But there's a very significant percentage of American citizens that do not want peace, or they believe that peace is found through war. A little bit of an oxymoron, war is peace, but hey, 1984. The United States announced that it was halting some weapon shipments to Ukraine last week. There was a lot of blowback on that. So President Trump yesterday announced that the United States will be resuming weapon shipments to the Ukraine, and Ukraine is getting its ass handed to it by the Russians. The Russians are steadily advancing every day. The Russians have an interesting military doctrine. It's an they are not a blitzkrieg military culture. They're an inch by inch, artillery-based, heavy casualty-based military doctrine. They're brutal in what they're doing, and they're just wearing the Ukrainians down. And my prediction is that this is a prediction, an opinion. My prediction will be is that what is fenced to us here through the press as a stalemate, like an ongoing forever war, the Russians are going to continue to grind the Ukrainians up inch by inch. And then one day, and that day could be tomorrow, they're going to break through and be in Kyiv 3 days later. And that's going to be the end of the war unless NATO intervenes militarily. That's why we need to be involved in politics. Another potential pipe of peace, so to speak, would be a perceived weakening of Communist Party chief Xi Jinping's control of the Communist Party in China. Xi Jinping has been absent from some very important political gatherings, which is very unusual, usually indicates either a health problem or a political health problem. His power has been reined in by other top leaders in the party who have proposed new rules to regulate powerful commissions that Xi Jinping put in place a decade ago. We can't tell what's going on there, but anything that would be going on that would indicate that Xi Jinping's reign is in decline and that his power is being challenged would mean that the Chinese are going to have to turn internally and will be less capable of creating chaos outside their borders.
I have a question about that because I don't think I've understood what Xi Jinping's position really was. How can he experience a political issue? Is he running against people?
They have a political process in the Communist Party of China. They actually have elections.
Okay.
So, and there is a opaque power. Um, there's opaque power in that party, and there's factions. There's millions and millions of people in the Communist Party of China. I think there's 100 million members of the Communist Party of China.
Imagine if Americans were that involved.
Well, imagine, that country, since I started being involved with it in 1993, when I went to China the first time, there was no cars on the road. Most of the transport was by foot. That was probably 60% of it. There was probably 35 or 40% of the people on bicycles, and 10% were on motor scooters or motorcycles, and a handful of cars. The place was so poor. I can't even describe to you how poor China was when I first got involved there in 93. Now we're talking 93, 2003, we're talking 32 years later. The place is staggeringly wealthy. Staggeringly. Now that is a tribute to the ingenuity and the hard work of the Chinese people, but also that Communist Party of China was China first. And it developed that country and has taken more people out of poverty in the shortest period of time in the history of the world. It's truly an amazing accomplishment. And Chinese people are really happy with their lives. And when you have a party like that, you have factions, and he is the supreme dictator of that party. But hey, it's like a king. The king is dead. Long live the king. I mean, he's not forever. He was. He's not Mr. Right. He's Mr. Right now, and Mr. Right now may be coming to the end of his reign.
Hmm.
And there are political machinations in China. Now they've had many peaceful transitions of power, but their history, China's history, is one of dynasty, and within the dynasties, we're in the dynasty of Mao, the Mao dynasty. Every once in a while, a leader wakes up dead. So, yes, his reign can be challenged. Many of his closest associates have recently been arrested, either by him or by other powers in the party. There is a struggle. Xi was a reformer. He's the most traditionalist communist leader that's been in power in China since I've been involved there. He is, when he started, people thought he was going to be very westernizing. He's not. He's very pro-China. He's China first. And we keep being told that China's on the verge of invading Taiwan. But if there's a power struggle there, and that could be related to other issues we're going to talk about shortly, uh, uh, not the least of which that during the uh, conflict between Iran and Israel, the United States flew those B-2 bombers, and everybody cheered because they dropped those bunker busters right down the ventilation shafts of those buried installations, which was a great technological achievement with 30-year-old technology. Imagine what they're not showing us.
Yeah.
But, China, nobody heard anything from China. They weren't in the game at all. They issued some statements. It showed the world that at this point in world history, China is still not ready to really confront the United States in geopolitical affairs. That's one way of looking at it. Here's another way of looking at it. The Chinese could be laying in wait, watching the United States get embroiled in yet another Middle East quagmire, weakening our country both militarily and financially. And the Chinese are just waiting there to clean up the scraps when we're completely depleted. So, there's a lot of ways to look at things, and it depends on the street corner that you're standing on. The Chinese are developing tremendous military capabilities. They now have a blue water navy. They are now building aircraft carriers. They are truly the threat to the United States, but they might not yet be the threat that we're told that they are, which is a great way to get military budgets, right? Great way to get money. We called it the the nuclear weapons gap, the missiles gap, Dr. Strangelove, the mine shaft gap. Now we got the AI gap. Every time there's a gap, to fill that gap, I get taxed. Okay, great. That's part of what we're going to talk about. The big, beautiful bill passed, as you know. I have not had time to read it yet. I will read it. It's 940 pages long, but I am looking at certain parts of it. One part that I found interesting, I'm gratified by this because for many years I've known that if we're going to change this country, we're going to change education in this country. What matters, Marion Rarick, is who's educating our children and what they're teaching them. Representative Marion Rarick, who read into the record here in Minnesota that over 2,000 employees of the University of Minnesota make more than the governor. And it stopped there. That's not enough, Representative Rarick. What do those 2,000 people teach my children? And what can the Minnesota legislature do to influence education policy on campus? This ties into the conversation about Christianity. We're going to get there soon. We're not ready, it seems, as a political entity, that would be the Republican Party of Minnesota, to challenge the true power base of leftism, either because we are Republicans who are really leftists, like Arnie Carlson, a former governor here, a Republican governor who's a leftist, or we just don't have the courage to do it because we're worried about our careers getting reelected. Well, President Trump is not worried about getting reelected because unless he has some trick up his sleeve, this is his last term, and he has convinced the Republican Party in Washington to pass this bill. They did it, and in that bill is sweeping changes to education policy, sweeping changes, the likes of which are unprecedented. There is a tax credit for private school choice, and its intent was to break up the hold of the teachers union in Democratic states. The tax credit program would provide scholarships to K through 12 students to pay for private schooling. I mean, this is a huge change in federal education policy. These scholarships would be the first major federal initiative designed to propel the nationwide growth of private school choice, which is largely conservative and a Christian movement, and largely an evangelical movement in many cases. The House version of the bill was changed by the Senate, and they watered it down so that it will not have the impact in the blue states that the House intended it would have. But in the states that want to participate, there are actually, scholarships to help families that want to send their kids to private schools, which are often religious in nature. As part of the process of passing this bill, the GOP's senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, went into a rage and resigned from the Senate. This is a positive for America. This guy is not a Republican. He's not an America First Republican. It opens a seat there. I'd rather see a Democrat win that seat than a Democrat in Republican clothing. He is awful. He's always been awful. His quote was, in Washington over the last few years, it's become increasingly evident that leaders who are willing to embrace bipartisanship, compromise, and demonstrate independent thinking are becoming an endangered species. It underscores the greatest form of hypocrisy in American politics. When people see independent thinking on the other side, they cheer. But when those very same people see independent thinking coming from their side, they scorn, ostracize, and even censure. Well, yes, our party is changing. It's not independent thinking. Tom Tillis is part of the Uni Party, and he objects that there are more and more people that are being forced by the citizens to take a more America First attitude. President Trump was certainly happy to see Tom Tillis go, and he posted up about it. And, that just plays into, like CD6 in Minnesota. Tom Emmer and Donald Trump are great friends. No, they're not. That's political theater. Donald Trump knows that Tom Emmer is a never Trumper. But if nobody's going to challenge Tom Emmer and CD6, Tom Emmer and Donald Trump are going to be best friends. This is going on all over the country. This is not a knock on Tom Emmer. Tom Emmer is an American citizen, and he reflects, allegedly, the will of his constituency here in CD6, Minnesota, and he has every right to support President Trump in a full-throated way as the House Majority Whip. I don't think he's really changed his stripes internally. Maybe he has. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about politics. Tom Emmer might change. And if he changes, I will embrace that change, and I invite him on the podcast. And I'm going to see him very shortly at an event, and I'm going to invite him on the podcast face-to-face because he knows who I am, and I'm sure he doesn't like that I ride him. I don't want to ride him. I want Tom Emmer to represent the will of his constituents, which is, in CD6, the strength of the Republican Party in Minnesota is America first. It is not the Republican Party of Minnesota that has prevailed over these last 10 years. It's Donald Trump. And we have to understand here in Minnesota that the constabulary of the Minnesota Republican Party, led by Alex Plekish, is very anti-Trump and very pro-traditional rhino candidates like Adam Schwarze, who we're going to get to in just a minute. And they keep running these people like Kendall Qualls, who's another ex-military veteran, ex-military veteran, Kendall Qualls, ex-military veteran, Adam Schwarze. They keep running these people, and they run out there and they mouth America first. But when you really look at what they're saying, which we're going to do shortly, that's not really who they are. They are acting. I do not want an actor representing me. It is the theater that I want to end because, as Frank Zappa said, American politics is theater for the military-industrial complex. It's just theater. We don't want theater, we citizens. We want authentic citizens who represent our desire for peace and prosperity. We want people who won't sell out. We're going to talk about Senator Sheehy from Montana, who Adam Schwarze said was his model of who he wants to be. That's his master model. Well, we're going to find out about Senator Sheehy just in a minute. And I don't want these kind of people. No matter how successful they are at killing people, no matter how great their military careers were, they have given over, and there's nothing wrong with them giving over to the warrior life. I understand it and I respect it. I just don't want you in Congress because I don't want to have a warrior culture. I want to have a peaceful and prosperous culture. And these two things don't go together. They don't go together like oil and water. If you're a hammer, as I said, every problem is a nail. I don't want that. President Trump is continuing putting the pressure on for these reciprocal trade tariffs, which are now alleged to start on the 1st of August. Many countries have gotten letters now with some very high tax rates, and I'm going to give you my prediction by the time we get to August 1st, where the substantial production is, the goods that we import in this country that you and I buy at Walmart and Costco and Amazon, all those countries are going to be 25% because President Trump doesn't want to stop trade. He wants to tax it, and he wants more access to other countries' markets so we have a more export-driven economy. He's a very good businessman. He knows exactly what he's doing. And all this hand-wringing and whining is because people want to hang on to, guess what? One world economy and one world government. One world economy is the Trojan horse of world government. President Trump, and I know there's a lot of things we can say negative about him now. I'm not going there today. I'm pissed off about a lot of stuff, but let's just see how it all plays out. You know, it's easy to be a critic before you know what the punchline is. I want to find out what the punchline is on some of these issues that are going on. Because Trump is dealing with, he's surrounded by people that are globalists still. Still, he has to support candidates who really don't support him because otherwise he's going to be endorsing Ilhan Omar, for example. We got a long way to go here. That's why I'm urging you to get involved in politics. And, because we use the tire business here at Free People Radio to build our content at TireGet.com, where next time you buy tires, if you want to support the content, there it is. It's a beautiful website. 75% of those tires are imported. So when people ask me, what is my credentials to talk about international trade? Well, guess what? I've been doing it since 1987. So I've been, Adam Schwarze said he'd been in 75 countries. Hey, me too. I didn't go there for boots on the ground. I went there to make money. I've been to Thailand and, Vietnam and Korea and Japan and China and, Turkey and so many different countries in pursuit of the tire business. And you say, boy, that's not very America first. Hey, I didn't make it this way. This was government policy. It's either import tires or not be in the tire business. So I want to see more tire production onshore here in the United States, and we sell as many American-made tires as we can. You go to that website, and if you want to buy them, they're just going to cost you 2 or 3 times as much as the imports. And there's people that do it. Like my friend John last week. He bought some very expensive tires. And I'm not going to tell anybody not to do that. And these tariffs are going to increase the price over time of the imported tires. Prices and inflation is not the same thing. Price is going to go up. Okay, that's great. Maybe we'll have more jobs and more production here in the United States. But the real driving force of these tariffs, these reciprocal tariffs, which got everybody's skirts in a bunch, is just simply to raise revenue so we don't go broke. We import $4 trillion of goods every year in a good year. 25% is the number. That's $1 trillion. $1 trillion a year of new revenue. Let's say it's only 600 or 700 billion. New revenue. It's called balancing the budget and paying down the debt. And these people, like the Krasenstein brothers that criticize this, these people really have their heads up their ass. The bills come and due. It's time to pay the piper. Pay up, sucker. We ran up this bill, the boomers, and we're going to have to pay this off now. That's just the way. The bank's going to get paid one way or the other. This is the gentle way. Globalist updates. In Germany, there's a Germany First party called Alternative for Deutschland. Guess what? The left in Germany is getting ready to ban the party. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? That people's political ambitions can be thwarted by the alliance of leftists and centrists who seek to maintain the status quo, the center where the evil really lies. And when people come in from the outside and try to topple that, they're ridiculed because they want that business model of debt slavery, drug use, and war to be overturned. And they're all of a sudden racists and anti-Semites. It's awful. Right here in Minnesota, we have our Minneapolis Star and Tribune. It's a very interesting newspaper. I try to read it every day. They published a couple of very interesting editorial pieces written by alleged Republicans. One of them written in part by someone I know, Dario Anselmo, who is a Republican and served in the Minnesota legislature as a Republican. I call him Dario the Democrat because he's a Democrat. I don't know why he calls himself a Republican. But Dario wrote something with a dude named Tom Horner, and here's what he said. The root problem is our political system itself. They're reacting to the horrific assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband. And they're saying things have to change. And he says the root problem is our political system itself. We have allowed the two parties to create a duopoly one that feels entitled to its voters and divides the country into blue and red. Okay, that is called using a truth to advance your propaganda goals. And we do have a political system that is one system with an illusion of choice between blue and red. And what these people are saying is that if the political system was changed so that it was more centrist, we'd have less political extremism. And this is the height of trying to fool people. That's why the Minneapolis Star-Tribune published this piece. The reason we have political extremism is because the center generates slavery, drugs, and piracy, and people have had enough of that, and it's making them extremely opposed to the center. Yet this guy, Democrat Dario and Salmo, is saying we need to have a political system that generates more centrism. And after all these different prescriptions, the bottom line of this piece was that they would trade voter ID if they could just get ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting guarantees leftism. And those of us in the political process know that. So what they're trying to do is come up with a real nice Trojan horse using the horrific deaths of these people to advocate for centrism, just like Kendall Qualls did. Just like Kendall Qualls. Same thing. Oh, these people were assassinated. We're better than this. We have to be centrists. No, the center is what's generating the extremism. As long as we stay addicted to war, the addiction to war we shall have. As long as we stay addicted to healthcare, disease is what we're going to have. As long as we stay addicted to the mainstream media, propaganda is what we're going to have. Because that's what we have had, and they're not going to change unless we citizens get into the political parties and change this for our own personal benefits. And then a former governor, Arnie H. Carlson. Man, this guy, woo, what a Democrat he is. I mean, he came up with I'll read his summary statement. The Trump Republicans of today are not conservative. They are totally radical with their blind willingness to concentrate power in the president while generating massive deficits that will topple our economy. They have no plan for tomorrow and always blame their failings on others. Well, Arnie, that's not me, and you're welcome to come on the podcast because what you're doing is painting with a broad brush, and you're ignoring all the people that are really considering this philosophically and historically and trying to chart a new course for the nation. What you're saying is that Republicans are causing deficits. That's a lie. This is a bipartisan effort that goes back to President Bush. Okay, that's number one. Arnie Carlson is advocating for a massive progressivism tax, a progressive tax strategy. He wants to tax the wealthy. He even brags about the 91% tax rate on the wealthy under the Eisenhower administration back in the 50s. Well, I want to get government out of everybody's life. That's me, myself personally. I don't want government involved in anybody's life. And while I think that, there's a, kind of ridiculous how wealthy some of these people are, and their wealth was generated because of their fascistic involvement with government, another thing I'd like to stop, get government out of people's life. How far would Amazon go? How far would Microsoft go if they weren't supported by the U.S. government? Questions like that. But I want government small, and I want people free. And we've come to the point where we don't think that's possible. We've lost touch with what it is to live in the Republic of the United States of America. No, this guy, Trump Republicans of today are not conservative. Who cares? It's a label. We are not totally radical. And I do not want to blindly concentrate power in the president. I don't want that. That's been done by Congresses for 50 years. President Trump is wielding that power to try tack the country back towards a Republican form of governance. Arnie Carlson doesn't like that because he's a leftist. And let's talk about what does this really mean? What does this really mean politically here in Minnesota? Who is the Republican Party of Minnesota running for office? And when I say the Republican Party, Adam Plekish, the chairman of the party, is running around the state saying Schwarze is his guy. They're going to do everything they can to get Schwarze endorsed and then elected. And let's listen to a little bit of Adam Schwarze. Let's really think through the party that just hired Michael Broadcorp to trash endorsed candidates, the same Broadcorp that then endorsed Harris Waltz for president. That party, our party, the party I'm in, the party that lies to me, continues to lie to me, and then puts their thumb on the scale with Adam Schwarze. And then, for example, up in CD7 with Michelle Fishback, they've already endorsed her, even though there's going to be allegedly an endorsing convention up there. No, they've already come out and supported her. That'd be Alex Plekish. Alex, you should resign for this kind of thing. And of course, you will eventually be deposed or resign. Everything has its end. We need real leadership. If I was to lead this party, I wouldn't pick sides like this. I would just try to build a political party in every precinct. I do the hard work of bringing new citizens into the party. And then I'd let them vote. And then let the will be done. Let the will of the people be done. Let's play Adam Schwarze talking to Jake Duesenberg on The Truth Hurts, talking about Nikki Haley. Tanner, can you cue that one up for me, please?
Yep. Let's pull up the A4. So this is a press release that came out February 12th, 2024. On February 12th, there was only Trump and Nikki Haley left in the race. Dawson, go ahead and scroll down a little bit. You're listed on this campaign press release as the co-chair for CD5. So what exactly attracted you to the Nikki Haley campaign? Why did you agree to be the CD5 co-chair? Yeah. Everybody watched those Nikki Haley debates, Neocon Nikki, and a lot of people were unimpressed with her. So what drew you to her campaign, especially when it's just her and Trump left in the race?
Well, I guess, can you pull up the press release?
Yeah, put the press release back up on.
Oh, that's just this thing.
Yep.
I guess the bottom line up front is I didn't submit that. That came from her team. I came with my permission, and I'll own that. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know any better. But I didn't submit any.
But what do you mean you didn't know any better? Obviously, Trump had been in there for 2016.
Yeah. And, no. I allowed them to submit my name on the list, but essentially what happened was Nikki Haley's campaign reached out to me. They were looking for people that they could leverage support. And they said, hey, you're a leader. We're looking for people that we can list as good people in the community. Can we list your name on this letter? And I said, yes.
What'd you like about Nikki?
But you were supporting Nikki Haley, right?
No, I didn't. I have no.
Why would you put your name on there if you didn't support her?
I didn't put my name on there. That's my point.
But you with your permission.
Yeah, with my permission, yeah.
So you gave permission for it, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I absolutely did. Yeah, I didn't know any better.
Well, that looks like an endorsement, right?
No, because I didn't endorse.
Well, everyone would take that as an endorsement.
But I'm saying I didn't even know that was going to come out like that. They asked me if I could be listed on her list as somebody who's a leader in the community.
Right, but that you would understand that would look like an endorsement, Nikki Haley.
I do now. I didn't at the time, honestly. Yeah, no, I didn't.
So you don't even support. You didn't even.
No, I didn't endorse. That's the crazy thing is I didn't endorse Nikki Haley. I have no. If you look at I didn't sanitize my Twitter or
That's
social
good,
media
Tanner.
stuff. There's not
Tanner,
one.
as a young voter and citizen of Minnesota, I'm biased, and I know that our politics is not the same. How does that strike you? That interaction?
It's adding on top of the other podcast that we had him talking on last week, I think it was. If you supported Nikki Haley or if you had anything to do with her, just say it, dude. I'm more just torn up. I can get past, and if you supported her, tell me why. I may disagree with you, but at least you're honest. But the first podcast that we reacted to, what podcast was that?
That was the last one.
The last one, what was the podcast he was on?
That was the Politics and Pitchforks on KFAN with Jeremy Munson and Susan Sjogren Smith.
Yeah, so they had questioned him on a donation to the Nikki Haley, and he threw his girlfriend under the bus for it. But then in this one, he's trying to play this game of like, no, I didn't put my name on there. Like, as if the question was, hey, did you code the website and write your name on it?
Oh, I see what you're saying. He had one lie for politics and pitchforks, and he's got a different lie today.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Do I understand you
So
correctly?
it's not transparent in any way. And if anything, you're digging yourself a bigger hole, Adam, because like, just say, if you did support her, just say it. And
which I saw Kristen Robbins, who was on that list, who's a state legislator. She was also on this campaign team, which is that's what that was. Those were the campaign coordinators for the Nikki Haley for President campaign, including State Senator Julia Coleman, one of my favorites. These people support Nikki Haley. And why did they do that? Well, that's this theme we're working on right now. This is the military, Nikki Haley, and evangelical Christian Zionism coming together in support of Israel and the forever war to defend, well, what we're going to talk about. This is what we're working on. I'm not taking a position on it, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying this is an interesting phenomenon in the Republican Party. And if we're going to lie about it ex post facto, it makes the investigation very difficult. That's why I think your comment is very insightful. Adam, could you own it and tell us why you wanted to work with Nikki Haley instead of saying, geez, I didn't get it?
yeah.
And if
Oh,
you didn't,
my finances are tied with my girlfriend. She signed the check. Well, Adam, dude, how can I trust you as a leader then? Because in your own household, you don't know where your money is going.
oh, you're
So
you're really getting into the
dude, it's just he comes off really disingenuous, and I want to like every candidate or possible candidate. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But dude, you're already at a bad start. Like something's not right about this. I don't know what you're lying about, but you're not owning up to this Nikki Haley thing. It feels like you're trying to avoid it, but the receipts are there. Just own up to it, dude.
I think that's very interesting. And this is my comment about lying. The worst lie is when you lie to yourself. And I have done it, and I do it, and I adopt Psalm 91 the next time this happens. I'm going to read Psalm 91 to myself. Look it up. It's a great psalm. Then we lie to each other. The politics that I want to see be born is the politics of George Washington, who could not tell a lie, or honest Abe Lincoln. These are the roots of the Republican Party, because republicanism is linked to Christianity. And that link is real, and then would create in the Republican an awareness of thou shalt not lie. These are moral precepts that are necessary to have a well-functioning culture and society. When our leaders lie to us, hey, guess what? We get a $37 trillion debt and an endless war.
Yeah.
Right? There you go. That's why I say when Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump sit together, I'm really not interested in it because it's theater. I'm not interested in what they say because they don't always tell me the truth. I'm interested in what they do. Wouldn't it be great if what our politicians said and what they did were one and the same? Then we could go about fixing problems together as a community, and we could make a much larger constituency of Americans because people will respond to the truth. I believe, maybe I'm wrong. I should ask, do you think people can feel the truth and are more prone to follow leadership that's honest than leadership that's dishonest?
Yes, and I think that's like what's so crappy about this, like just the nature of politics right now, that so many candidates come out and then they're not transparent about something. They either lie bold face. It makes it harder for us to pick candidates because now every time one pops up, we have to go through this lie detector test. I think people, they want the truth, but now it is so hard because a lot of these politicians have gotten really good at lying.
Well,
Adam, you're not that good at lying. I'm going to be honest with you, dog.
That's a good point. But doesn't that make people want to give up?
Yeah, it makes people not want to get involved. I mean, half of my friends, they don't get involved because they don't use the word theater, but that's what they're describing. Is it's just a headache. They don't know what the truth is. You turn over a rock and then you have 5 more rocks underneath it. You never
wouldn't
get
it
to
be
the truth.
possible that the whole point of the line is to get your friends to disengage so they can be ruled instead of they actually participate and take their civic right to self-govern?
I believe.
I mean, that's really what that is the awful fact of this matter. Every time you lie, I know politicians are watching me. Every time you lie or let your colleagues lie, you disincentivize Minnesota citizens or Tennesseans or Oregonians or wherever you're watching, wherever that lying goes on, we're disenfranchising people from Republican governance. That's the point. This is no different than cutting people's heads off and hanging them upside down on the path to the castle. We're going to find something else to do because down that path, it's not very fun. That's what lying is. Let's play the next one. This is not a personal thing. I just want to highlight something. Just play this next one about cohabitation.
Adam, thank you for coming on the show. I, for one, appreciate the policy talk. And P.S. You are not dumb to have not given the girl a ring.
He says you are dumb.
Oh, you are dumb. Sorry, I misread that. You are dumb to have not given the girl a ring.
She does look like a knockout on your website, assuming that brunette is the one with the pictures. So what the heck's the deal? See, you said you want to stand up. Let's talk about your policy.
Can we talk about Rand? I'm much more versed in foreign policies than I am in personal relationships.
So I'm only highlighting this. I'm not picking at Adam Schwarze for living with a woman who is writing the checks to the campaign contributions, allegedly, right?
Right.
So they're pretty tight, right? Tight enough that she's the excuse.
Yeah.
She must love him to put up with that.
Wait. So this brunette they're talking about is his girlfriend?
Yes.
But he's acting like it's not his girlfriend.
Well, what they're saying is you're dumb not to marry her.
Okay,
I'm only bringing this up because he cutely laughed about it and said, let's talk about foreign policy. I'm not a judge of Adam Schwarze, and I don't think it's any of my business, his personal life. None. Zero. I am not criticizing his personal life. It's none of my damn business. Why I am bringing it up is the Republican Party of Minnesota, well, let's put it this way. The establishment of the Republican Party of Minnesota is very quick to comment on Royce White's personal life. So apparently you can be an ex-military veteran and a SEAL and live with a woman and nobody's going to care. But if you're a black man and you have a complicated personal life, what's the difference from a Christian perspective? There is none from a Christian perspective. From a racist perspective, there's a big difference. And I'm just bringing this up, not to dwell on it, but submitting it to you for your consideration. Because all of us living in this Democrat liberal order have violated, not all of us, I'm sure somebody can say, I've only slept with one partner and I slept with her after I married her and she was my high school sweetheart. There's somebody out there like that. They're there. And the rest of us broke the rule about these issues. I certainly have. And I'm not going to stand in judge of either Adam or Royce about their personal lives. And their personal lives have nothing to do with their politics. But we want to here in Minnesota, and this is going to go right into this Christian Zionism theme and Christian theme. Why do we have one set of rules for one guy and a different set for the other guy? What is this? Let's think about it. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just asking you to think about it because to me, it's very striking. Let's listen to the next piece on Ukraine.
So Ukraine, you would not be supportive of any of this funding and any of the support?
I would be supportive of selling our old munitions because right now what's happening is we're selling them our old stuff. And this is one thing that's happening that's good behind the scenes. Essentially, Ukrainians, this is in the foreign policy world, this is called the war of bloodletting, where we are funding a neutral party Ukrainians to go against Russia when, while it's expensive, I'm not for giving them our current tech or giving them money. But if we're giving them our old stuff, very careful. If we're selling them our old stuff, and then they're also battle testing some of our newer stuff, we're not dying on the battlefield, and they're testing our newer stuff, so we don't have to battlefield validate it.
But so you're fine with that policy? Because it does seem to me that's the policy, but they won't say that in Washington, D.C.
That's good. Thank you. So what Adam Schwarze, if you're an America Firster, what he's saying is he's okay with selling our old tech to the Ukrainians. Well, first of all, none of it got sold. You and I paid for it. It's all been given. Hundreds of billions of dollars of weaponry. And how did that really go down? Well, the defense contractors didn't give it to the Ukrainians. The defense contractors had huge inventories of relatively obsolete kit that they were going to have to scrap, what we call obsolete inventory. And instead of them having to scrap it and write it off, they got paid hundreds of billions of dollars to send it over to the Ukrainians. Who paid for it? We, the people, paid for it. And then Adam says it's the policy of bloodletting. What kind of policy is that? I don't support the policy of bloodletting. Those are human beings who are bleeding. I am opposed to war. Unless it is a war to defend my country. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Let's listen to this next one about what we're exporting.
By the way, that neocon, do you guys know where that word actually comes from?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the etymology of neocon is actually the liberals after World War II, the Democrats that were for pro-war efforts. It's not even a Republican. It's
right.
It's
it's not
Democrats.
a Republican thing for sure.
But the military-industrial complex.
Biden administration.
Yeah, but exactly. Exactly. That's where it actually is a problem. Is American politicians who haven't served think that they have the moral high ground to do this institutionalizing and democracy exporting to other countries. We try to do it all over the Middle East with the Arab Spring that we're behind the scenes promoting. It just doesn't work.
Unfortunately,
okay,
I
that's
wish it was
good.
just those that haven't served.
So what Adam is saying is that we're these politicians who didn't serve, which is not really the fact because 20% of the politicians did serve, that we're exporting democracy. No, that was the cover story. This is why your friends are disengaged. That was the lie. What we were really exporting was the dollar hegemony. In any country that deems to disengage from the central banking system, that'd be Gaddafi, Hussein, the Iranians, any country that would deem to have the courage and the fortitude to go without the central banking system, we're going to export democracy to that country. We call it democracy. What that is called the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar and democracy, they go together like hand in glove, don't they? Foreign aid. Let's listen to this next one. This is interesting because it really speaks to the heart of giving over to the warrior way. When Adam Schwarze talks about John McCain, watch his body language, please.
You know,
And
guys like
not
you and
just
me, guys like you
Democrats.
and me would say John McCain served this country tremendously. I mean, he was a POW for 5 years,
Yeah.
so it's like tremendous service. But I mean, he was the quintessential neocon.
I think Rumsfeld was the quintessential, but
Yeah. Well, yes, fair enough, right? But I mean, McCain became the big honcho. Up
It's
at
funny
Capitol
because
Hill.
back when I was younger, and I still have respect for him as a war hero and a veteran, but
Stop
I would
right
not
there,
have,
Tanner.
15 years ago realized.
You see that hand on that heart? That love for John McCain? No, John McCain was a neocon extraordinaire and spread that U.S. dollar all over the world. He escaped scandal because he was chosen to do so. He was a thief and got away with it. And he was directly involved with the overthrow of a democratically elected government in Ukraine that led us to the problem we're in today. Look at that hand on that heart. My hand would not go on my heart for John McCain. Whatever he did to serve in his time as a POW was overshadowed by the ill that he did. And in fact, you can find, and we'll either play it on the next podcast or you can stick it in right here, when John McCain was the deciding vote in the Trump 45 presidency to change the healthcare system and he so joyfully put his thumb down and left this graft, abusive healthcare system in place. So we'll get to that in the future. But that hand over the heart really, and Adam has had a very difficult time with the military. I'm not going to comment on that because I don't understand it. But that shows you his love, and he should love it. He was willing to give his life for it. But again, the SEAL brand. Do I want this brand running my country? Let's play this next piece on Tom Emmer. Tom Emmer, starting at 125.
I'm looking at our sheet. Let's talk about Tom Emmer. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't have a relationship with him. I just know he's the majority whip. He's the third most powerful Republican in the party.
Congress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No opinion on the guy?
I mean, I've met him once when I was going to run for CD3. I met him once. It's the only time I ever talked to him.
Very political answer there.
I don't want to get misendorsed or something. I don't know, or endorse somebody. I don't know.
Sure. And so what do you think about, the condemnation? We think that's coming from the Emmer camp and whatnot. So there's a condemnation effort that's being done by the MNGOP to condemn Action for Liberty, which obviously represents the most hardcore
I'm not gonna lie.
grassroots MAGA
I've heard that there's like a warring thing right now in MNGOP between established.
Front of the Sunday.
Well, I don't read this. I don't read the Star and Sickle.
I don't either. Do most Republicans.
Better off
I don't know that. Yeah, no. Again, this goes back to what I'm trying to do. Like, I know there's like a lot of infighting right now. The good news is I don't have any part of any of it.
Mm-hmm.
My goal right now is to not make enemies. I'm trying to say this is a historic opportunity. We had a U.S. senator who's so corrupt that she had to step down. And when Trump's crushing it right now, if we have a good economy in the midterm election cycle, and they're going to run Peggy Flanagan, who's not electable.
Yep.
If we don't screw this up, we're going to flip Minnesota red. I truly believe that.
So
I don't know who's going to run for. I don't know who's going to run for governor. But what I'm trying to do right now is say, hey, SEALs win not because we're like awesome people, but because we work really hard. We put together good teams.
Mm-hmm.
In my background, I have worked really hard. I have a track record of working hard. I have a track record of putting together really high performing teams for no fail missions. Mm-hmm. And this is like the most important mission I've ever worked on.
Right, because right now, the MNGOP is pushing away conservatives right now, and it sounds as if what you're saying here is that you don't want to be that way, that you want to unify the conservatives, and that you want to, embrace these elements of the party.
My understanding is you guys are the conservatives. I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's ridiculous proposal by them. That's why I asked you about Emmer, because they clearly don't want groups like us to exist. And it's like, how's that a winning strategy?
I mean, you guys, I was just at CD2 and CD3 last week, and I think there's a large portion of CD2 are part of I met the A4L president, Eric.
Eric Moritz.
Yeah, so I met him. They're like, clearly you guys are involved in the process.
Right.
So how do I solve this as a team builder? Well, no, I want to give everybody a voice. Mm-hmm. I'm not anti-establishment. I'm not anti-grassroots. No, I need to build a team that has.
Stop it, please. I'm anti-establishment, and I'm willing to lose to overthrow the business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy. I'm willing to lose as long as it takes. And if I go out a loser, I'll go out a loser. But at least I'll go out true to myself. What Adam is telling me is anything to win, which I would expect from a SEAL, because he talks about he goes on missions where losing is not an option. So whatever he has to do to win, including lying, is part of his bag. And he's not anti-establishment. And when I watched him talk about Tom Emmer, his body language was not very reassuring. And his protestations that I hear there's a war in the MNGOP, I don't read the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and you want to be a senator. It doesn't seem like you know very much. Like you give your name to Nikki Haley to be on her campaign team, and you don't know you're endorsing her. I mean, you're a very sharp guy. You went to Harvard. You went to Johns Hopkins. You're a SEAL. You're highly trained, and yet you're a dummy. You see, this is a lie. You're not fooling me, and I'm going to submit to everyone watching this. Do you want to elect another liar to the Congress? Well, let's go a little bit farther. Let's play Adam Schwarze talking about his master model, Senator Tim Sheehy from Montana.
Of all the Navy SEALs that have made the move to Congress, which one would you say you would most likely vote like, or probably
Senator Tim Sheehy? I mean, he's already endorsed me, so that's actually pretty cool to have a U.S. senator already like on the team.
That's good. So he wants to be like Senator Tim Sheehy. Tanner, could you please play number 3?
China is building a fierce military. The Mexican drug cartels are killing our kids with fentanyl, and Joe Biden is allowing drag queen story time on our military bases. I'm Tim Sheehy. I'm a combat wounded Navy SEAL running for the Senate to get this woke crap out of our military and to keep our country safe.
We need strong conservative leaders who know how to defend America. We need Tim Sheehy.
John Tester's AWOL. I'm Tim Sheehy, and I approve this message because I'm reporting for duty.
And that gets us to the heart of tonight's podcast. You know, like Dan Schultz is a friend of mine. He went to West Point. I respect him. He's become very anti-war. You wouldn't even know that Dan was in the military, actually. He downplays it. You see that ad for Tim Sheehy. It took him to victory in Montana. You can't get more military or the use of military imagery or military words than John Tester's AWOL and I'm reporting for duty. And the American people love this. And then we wonder why we're always at war. You know, we're electing warriors, and what warriors do is they go to war. Not all of them. And this goes into why do we revere our warriors? This country was born in a revolution. You know, when the British rolled into New York Harbor, that was the largest armada ever assembled, the largest gathering for an invasion force ever in history up to that point. That was like D-Day, you know, when the British rolled in here to put down the rebellion. And our forefathers gave their lives, blood, toil, sweat, tears to make this country free of empire. And that was a war of necessity. That war was fought in New York, in New Jersey, in South Carolina. That was fought right here. You couldn't avoid it if you had courage. You could run away. But, I mean, if you had courage, you fought and died in that war. And we revere that. That's in our DNA. And then the British came back in 1812 and they burned the White House to the ground. That was a war in our country, a war of necessity. And then we fought a long war against the indigenous peoples of this continent. Be it as you may, I mean, if you're watching me and you're an indigenous person, you see that a war of settler colonialism. We don't have time to talk about that tonight, but that was a war on this soil. People fighting for their land. And then we had the Civil War. Here, Minnesotans played a huge part in the battle at Gettysburg. I mean, you know, a critical role. 10% of American citizens died in that war. And that really was the last war that we fought on our soil. World War I, fought over there. World War II, fought over there. Korea, fought over there. Vietnam, fought over there. Gulf War I, over there. Gulf War II, over there. Now we're doing all this fighting over there. There is a difference between wars defending your own soil and wars fought to promote the dollar hegemony. There's a difference. And we haven't sorted that out as the American people because I personally revere the warrior. I do. So if I do, you do. But let's start sorting this out and thinking about it. What does this really mean? I'll read you a quote from Senator Sheehy. Sweden and Finland are next. We've seen this movie before. Stop Putin now before the price tag for putting him down will be a lot higher. Georgia, Crimea, Syria, now Kyiv. What's next? Estonia, Finland, Sweden? GoFundMe pages and Twitter likes aren't enough. Soldiers, planes, bombs, and bullets will be needed against this tyrant. And that was in 2022. And then as more American firsters came up and opposed this war, Senator Sheehy modified his position. Now, was that a true change of heart, or was that a political calculation by a SEAL whose most important mission became getting elected to the Senate? I won't know. But I do know that, as in reference to into the Iran war, here's a recent quote. Most Americans are tired of, this is Senator Sheehy, the master model for Adam Schwarze, the master model. Remember, when you're in the military, you find a master model. That's why there's rank. Most Americans are tired of the Middle East and the conflicts there. And rightfully so, Senator Sheehy states. They're saying, man, we can't be getting involved in any more Middle East conflicts. And then he continues. But at the same time, important tectonic shifts are happening there that we need to be appraised of. And we have to respond to in the right way. Isolationism is not the way ahead. It just isn't. Whether we like it or not, we're in a global economy, the dollar hegemony. Quote, we are the most powerful economy in the world and the leader of the free world. See, that is Senator Sheehy, Adam Schwarze's master model. So I know there's a lot of Republicans in the Minnesota Republican Party that love this quote. We are the most powerful economy in the world and we are the leader of the free world. That's not an America First attitude. America First attitude is we're about the health and well-being of American citizens. The free world can take care of itself. Let's worry about our own freedom, which seems to be under assault. This is the master model for Adam Schwarze. But let me take it a step farther to make it clear, because we'll never know what Senator Sheehy thinks. He's been elected one time to Congress, one time. And according to Grok, and I say this because I don't want to get sued, I'm going to quote from Grok. I asked Grok, how much money has Senator Sheehy in his one cycle received from AIPAC and other Jewish-related organizations? And here's what Grok answered me. A conservative estimate of total donations and support from Jewish supportive groups, including AIPAC, to Senator Tim Sheehy ranges from, oh, get this, from $3.2 million to $3.5 million in one cycle. Man, that puts Tom Emory to shame. He's only gotten $562,000. Adam, it's a very good business you're getting into, isn't it? Your master model is on the dole. He's on the take. He's using that military, that exemplary military record, that warrior ethos, to get money from AIPAC. How will I ever know what he believes, and how will I ever know what you believe? And that goes right into the concept, because we've got this military ethos. We're addicted to war here in this country. We're addicted to it. And it intersects with Christianity, because we are a Christian country. I know people won't want to hear that. I mean, you aren't going to like it, but this is a Christian country, at least up until the 1980s. When I grew up, I knew I grew up in a Christian country, because I remember being in first and second grade and they were singing Christmas carols and I didn't like it because I was Jewish. So it was a Christian country in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up. And it changed in the 80s and 90s. And just like the war in the Ukraine was used for tremendous military industrial complex purposes, and when the resistance rose against it, we found a new problem, Israel in the Middle East, where we have a much higher level of support among Republicans for that war. It's very interesting. More Democrats than Republicans support the war in the Ukraine, but more Republicans than Democrats support the war with Iran. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that so uniparty of the military-industrial complex? That politics is their theater stage, and they've got a cast of characters that make sure that no matter what the war is, somebody's supporting it. And as long as we keep electing military people, and, you know, some of them are great, okay? I can't judge every one of them. But when they lie to me and they're on the take, then right off the bat, I know there's a problem. And I don't want people taking this kind of money from special interest groups. But then we get into Christianity. And I've spent a lot of time, as I said in the last podcast, in the evangelical world. And I'll give you a little preview. Thursday, if things go down as planned, I'm going to have a preacher come in here and talk to me about Christian Zionism, somebody that I know not very well, and I want him to explain it to me. So that will be very interesting for me. But Tanner, could you just play this piece from Reverend Hagee as we get into this last section?
Hello, I'm Pastor John Hagee, the founder and national chairman of Christians United for Israel, also known as CUFI. Over 40 years ago, my wife Diana and I felt the Lord's direction to create a night to honor Israel, an event that would bring Christians and Jews together in an atmosphere of honoring the Jewish people for their contributions to Christianity. Today, CUFI is the foremost pro-Israel grassroots movement dedicated to educating, motivating, and empowering millions of Americans to speak and act with one voice in defense of Israel and the Jewish people. CUFI supports Israel because God supports Israel, and His Word commands believers to bless, pray, comfort, and defend Israel and the Jewish people. For Zion's sake, we will not rest or be silent. I'm Pastor John Hagee, and we are Christians United for Israel.
The idea here is, how do we create a unified Republican Party with Christians United for Israel, with the military members allied with them, and then with the America Firsters? And all of us are against the communists, but are we? What does it all mean? And when we get into this Christian Zionism, and these are the things that I'm thinking about that we're going to talk about in the podcast to come. Is the Bible God's Word? Did God write the Bible? Because Christian Zionism is predicated on that it's sola scriptura, every word is the divine word, and that it's a literal interpretation of the Bible. We're going to read some of these biblical quotes that are the basis for Christian Zionism in just a minute. But is the Bible God's Word? And if it's God's Word and we know there's going to be an apocalypse, what is the meaning of free will? I mean, if the end's predetermined, what is free will? Do I have any? What is the concept, the Jewish concept of the apocalypse? What is Jewish eschatology? What is Muslim eschatology? What do Christian, Jewish, and Muslim eschatology have in common? How are they different? And what about the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, the repair of the world? These are questions that I'm interested in. And the bottom line of the whole thing is, what's driving our foreign policy? Rational actors? Is there any rational actors? I mean, are you a rational actor if you graduated with a PhD in foreign policy for Harvard University? What is driving the conversation? Because on one end, we got these radical, anti-religious, anti-God technocrats that think AI is the answer to everything. And then on the other hand, we've got the Word of God. And, I've made it very clear that I'm a believer and I've been steeped in the Bible my entire life. But these are issues I want to talk about with you and I want to think about. Doesn't mean I'm losing my faith. It means I'm deepening my faith through study, contemplation, and meditation. Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. This is the significant Bible verse where God makes a covenant with Abraham, which is interpreted as a divine promise to bless those who support Israel and curse those who oppose it. Evangelical Zionists see this as a mandate that they must support the modern state of Israel. Genesis 12:3. Thousands of years old, this verse. Ezekiel 36:24 through 28. For I will take you out of the nations, and I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. This passage describes God's promise to restore the Jewish people to their homeland, the land of Israel. And evangelical Zionists view this, the establishment of Israel in 48, and the liberation of Jerusalem in 67 as a predicate for guess what? The return of Jesus Christ. Zechariah 14:4. On that day his feet will stand on the Mountain of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split into from east to west. This verse depicts Christ's return to Jerusalem during the end times, and it emphasizes Israel's central role in Christian eschatology. Romans 11:25-26. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in, and in this way all Israel will be saved. This is the Apostle Paul discussing Israel's future salvation, and it suggests a distinct role for the Jewish people in God's plan. Evangelical Zionists interpret this as evidence that Israel remains God's chosen nation with a future mass conversion during the end times. And I have said this on the podcast many times, and I wasn't saying it in reference to Romans. I was saying it in reference to logic. When the Messiah comes, who's going to recognize him? Has to be a believer. I mean, a non-believer is not going to recognize a miracle. I deal with that every day. I see miracles where people see, and I look at them and I go, really? Boy, that's not very thankful of you. Revelation 21. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. Wow, that's a great one. The passage describes the millennial reign of Christ. 1,000 years. The Christian Zionists believe this will occur in Jerusalem after Israel's restoration. Well, that's a high premium on keeping Israel viable, because that's where Christ is going to reign from. Jeremiah 31:31. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah, that would be the Jews. As long as the heavens are above the earth, my covenant with them will never cease. This passage promises a new covenant with Israel and underscores the permanence of God's commitment to the Jewish people. Man, do I feel special. Maybe that's why I feel special. It's kind of a little bit like the drama of the gifted child. Isaiah 11:11. In that day the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. This prophecy describes a second gathering of Israel's exile. The evangelical Zionists see as fulfilled in the 20th century return of the Jews to Palestine, something that the British Empire benefited from tremendously. Daniel 9:24. 77s are decreed for your people in your holy city, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes. This is the 70 weeks prophecy, and it's central to Christian eschatology. Evangelical Zionists interpret it as outlining a timeline for Israel's redemption, culminating in a future 7-year tribulation and Christ's return. So the question I'm asking myself is, who's running this bitch? And what's running it? We have a digital politics. We're all on X. We're all living tremendously secular lives. Not all of us, but most of us. I'm a little less secular than some people. And it goes down to the choices I make. I was leaving the house today, and Professor Penn said to me, the doorbell's not working. And I said, so? She said, don't you think you should fix it? And I said, I don't care. And she said, why? And I said, knock, knock, knock. It worked for thousands of years, right? And she said, we live in the modern world. Fix the doorbell. Okay. You know, for me, I have a foot in that traditional world. I was raised there. I was raised by people that prayed 3 times a day. I struggle with my religiosity and my faith every day. trying to deepen it, trying to put sin underfoot. I actually live in this evangelical frame. That's where I live. I don't think much about the return of the Messiah because Jewish people believe in tikkun olam, the repair of the world, and I'm concerned about making myself not a captive to sin. That's what I'm working on. I don't consider myself qualified to start thinking about the Messiah because I'm not worthy to be redeemed. And that's why I pray, forgive me, Father, for I have willfully transgressed. Please forgive me because you're gracious and you're ever forgiving. That's why I pray this way, because I know I willfully transgressed. I lost my temper just walking into the studio today about something. So I don't personally spend a lot of time thinking about the world to come, olam haba, as it's said in Hebrew. I don't think a lot about that. I'm thinking about getting myself right, picking out the log in my own eye, getting myself prepared. Now I'm going to tell you something about Jewish people. Jewish people also have an apocalyptic eschatology. And what Jewish people believe is the Messiah will come when the Jewish people get their shit together. In other words, when we quit being apostates and heretics and quit giving ourselves over to sin, the Messiah is going to come back. The pressure's on the Jewish people in Judaism to make the world right for the return of Messiah. Okay, there's a lot of difference between Jewish eschatology, Christian eschatology, and Muslim eschatology, which we like to look at. But they all have an end times prophecy. All the Abrahamic religions have an end times prophecy. Does that prove that there is an end times prophecy that's correct and true and happening? Well, certainly millions and millions of Americans believe so. There's 10 million members of Christians United for Israel, and they're not, in love with the Jews for the Jews. They're in love with the Jews because they see the Jews as a springboard for Christ returning. Okay, that's just great. And the Jews see it, hey, give us your money, give us your political support, because, hey, we want greater Israel. So they have a symbiotic relationship going on. And then the military plays into it because somebody's got to do the dirty work and get paid for doing so. And we have a tremendous military-industrial complex, which really, now that it's all getting stripped away because there's resistance to the war in Ukraine, there's resistance to going to war over Taiwan, but there's not very much resistance in the Republican Party to going to war to support Israel. 75% of Republicans support that. Very few Republicans support the Ukraine thing, and there isn't great support for Taiwan. But Israel, hey, so we've got an intersection here of Christian Zionism and the military-industrial complex. And we've got 100 evangelical members of Congress, some of whom are ex-military. Are you getting my point? We're doing things and we're not thinking through why we're doing it. We don't know how we got here. And this podcast is about how did we get here? Where are we? And where do we want to go? And we got to have the courage to sort this out. And I'm going to tell you, when I started thinking about this, I was mentally deranged for a few days because I knew I was going to get a lot of heat for this, even asking these questions. Mind you, I'm not telling you what I believe. I'm asking questions so we can all think about this together. Do we want to have an American foreign policy that's based on eschatology? Because that's what we have. I'm going to say this again. Do we America Firsters want to have an American foreign policy based on Christian eschatology? This goes into, is the written word of the Bible God's word? Do we have free will? What are we doing here? And asking these questions, I do not want to be called a heretic. I'm asking questions because we have a movement called America First. It requires ideological consideration, philosophical exploration. We have to coalesce an ideology that we can all agree on. And I don't want to leave out Christians. And then we're not even talking about the Lutherans in Minnesota that are really aligned with the leftists. That's another group in Minnesota and in your state. You know, the Protestants that are not evangelical, They're aligned with leftism because God is love. Their way of dealing with it is saying, God is love. God is love. So we're going to love everything and love everybody no matter what they do to us. And that's another strain of thought that has to be considered. It's time for us as Americans to wake up. And if we're going to have a foreign policy and a domestic policy based on biblical verse, let's at least know that is where it's coming from. If we're going to elect leaders that have given over to the warrior way and put their hand on their heart for despicable cads like John McCain, whose post-military career far overshadows his service, I'm not going to remember him. And I was alive when he came off that plane. I watched it live. I don't think Adam was born yet. I remember what it was like when John McCain came home and how we revered him. His father was an admiral after all. So let us start to sort through these things as American citizens and get our mind right. Let's get our minds right. Let's figure out how we can unite around principles we can all believe in that generate peace and prosperity in my neighborhood. Thanks very much. Thursday is going to be cool. If it goes down as planned, the whole episode is going to be a minister, a preacher talking to me about why Christian Zionism. Thanks very much. Be well. Tanner, thank you.
Of course. Have a good night, everybody.